Bonsoir, good evening, and welcome to our public meeting, August 28, 2026. Bienvenue à notre réunion publique en date du 20 août 2026. Ouverture de la réunion à 6h06 p.m. On passe à l'item numéro 2, adoption de l'agenda. Adoption of the agenda. I'll need a mover and seconder. Monsieur Miner, seconded by Monsieur Duval. Any question on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those against? Carried. Item number 3, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, sur item numéro 4, proposed zoning bylaw concernant G. Dupont General Contractor, Inc., file number Z-04-2026. I believe we go to Madame Jariwala in regards to this zoning change. Madame Jariwala, good evening, and thank you for being here. I'll give you the floor so you can explain this zoning.
Good evening. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Okay, so first we'll be starting with the public meeting presentation for zoning file Z04-2026. So the public meeting is a requirement of the Planning Act and is being held to provide an opportunity for the public to voice their comments and concerns with regards to the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Township of Champlain to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Champlain before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. A person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So this particular file is pertaining to a property that is located between 122 and 128 Pendleton Street. It does not have a municipal address of its own, but this is to give a little bit of context as to where it is. So this is sort of on the edge of Van Cleek Hill. So the purpose of this application is to rezone the subject property from the R1 zone to the R2 zone, and this is to permit 2 semi-detached dwellings. So these images are just for some more context, and I can also provide some clarification. In the words 2 semi-detached dwellings, that does not mean 2 buildings. So this is one building that has each half of a semi. So we refer to those as each being a semi-detached dwelling. That's why this is for 2. So this is a standard semi. As you can see, here is an elevation drawing of the semi-detached that's being proposed. This is a site plan where you can see there's also a bit of a veranda in the front. There's garages proposed on both sides, and there's also decks proposed as well. So relatively symmetrical looking low-rise semi-detached dwelling. I'll also add that if approved and if this project moves forward, the applicant will also be doing an application to lift part lot control so that the lot can be further divided so that there can be individual ownership for both sides of the semi. So getting into the planning analysis, first is the provincial planning statement. So it states that planning authorities shall provide for a range and mix of housing options to meet current and projected needs by permitting residential intensification. It also says that settlement areas shall be the focus of growth and development. As I mentioned, this development is in Van Cleek Hill, which is a settlement area. And further, the PPS states that planning authorities shall support general intensification to support complete communities, including a range and mix of housing options that have access to existing infrastructure and public services. So next, the applicable policies for the United Counties of Prescott and Russell official plan. So within that official plan, this property is designated as urban policy area. It states that the urban policy area shall be the focus of future growth on municipal water and sewer services. The permitted uses in this designation include residential development, which provides for a range and mix of housing densities with road access and municipal services. So the semi-detached dwellings that are proposed are permitted within this designation. So next we have the Champlain Township zoning bylaw. So as I mentioned, this property is zoned R1. The R1 zone permits low density residential uses, but it's limited to only single detached. It does not permit semi-detached dwellings. The semi-detached dwellings are permitted in the R2 zone, as well as other low density residential uses. So the zoning bylaw amendment that's being requested is to rezone from R1 to R2. So here's just another image of the property and its location. The entirety of the property is being proposed to be zoned from R1 to R2. So this application was received on July 16th, 2026. It was circulated to internal and external agencies on July 29th. The mail notices were sent to neighbors within 120 meters of the property. A sign was also posted at the property, and the notice was also published in the local newspaper. All of these in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. I will also note that during the circulation period, there were two public comments that were received. The first public comment was pertaining to concerns relating privacy, traffic, compatibility, and servicing. Um, in response to that comment, as far as servicing is concerned, as the policies state, um, development is intended to be focused in areas with municipal servicing, such as Van Cleek Hill, which is where this is. There is a water main extension that's anticipated, but that will be at the cost of the applicant and in coordination with Champlain Public Works. As far as compatibility is concerned, it is a low-rise residential use, um, in similar in design as well in terms of front garage, driveway, and peaked roof. So that addresses the compatibility piece. In terms of traffic, it's not anticipated that any significant increase in traffic um, would be taking place as a result of this development, given that it is low-rise residential. Um, and lastly, I would also add that the provincial legislation now permits 3 units as of right on a property. However, those units cannot be separated. So, in a sense, if this development was for rental purposes, it would be permitted as of right. But because they are looking to split the semi-detached for split ownership purposes, um, a zoning bylaw amendment is required. The second public comment that was received was more just seeking clarification on the semi-detached that is being proposed. So to conclude, the next steps. The decision on this matter will be considered at the next council meeting on September 24th. If on September 24th, then there will be a 20-day appeal period to follow the decision that's made as prescribed in the Planning Act and following the notice of decision and the passing of the amending bylaw. If you wish to be notified of this decision of council, you must make a written request addressed to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yariwala. At this point, I would ask council if they have any questions in regards to the presentation. Seeing none, again, I'll go to the public. If there's anybody against or for this proposal, come forward and we'll hear you out. Mr. Barrett?
My name is Andre Barrett. I represent Mr. Dupont. I would just like to add that this proposal is on a very large lot by today's standards, namely 84 feet of frontage and 152 feet of depth, which is huge by today's standards. He's proposing two high-end semi-detached dwellings, each with a double garage and a building footprint in excess of 2,000 square feet to be built on a fully serviced lot. So the proposed semi-detached dwellings are consistent with the existing neighboring uses located on a local road, which consists of single-family dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, duplex dwellings, and converted dwellings. We do not anticipate parking issues since the building is set back 10 meters from the front property line and will have a double garage for each dwelling. Planning authorities are encouraged to facilitate intensification and redevelopment in the provincial planning statement as a way to capitalize on existing infrastructure. The county official plan encourages small-scale intensification with the construction of a new building containing a net increase of units on vacant land or on underutilized land in the built-up areas. The proposed semi-detached construction will meet all the requirements of an R2 zone. Completes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barrett. At this point, we'll move along to the next item. Whoops, you can't, oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Name, please?
My name is John Marinelli. I live at 114 Pendleton. I just had one concern when I heard about the whole project. I heard it was a semi-detached. I just didn't want to, or I wanted to make sure that both sides have just one occupant, right? It's not like it could turn into a fourplex. So I just wanted some clarification to make
Correct.
sure that that's the situation.
Yeah,
I did speak to Mr. Dupont when he was in the area, and I'm aware of what's going to be built, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah. To answer, and I'm sure Mrs. Yariwala will confirm, it's an R2 zone, so therefore two dwelling, not a four dwelling. Mrs. Yariwala?
Yep, I can confirm that the proposed project at this time is one dwelling, like per lot once they split it. That is their intended proposal, and that's what we're reviewing today. I will, however, sort of emphasize what I said before about provincial legislation. So the provincial legislation does state that properties that are properties that are in urban serviced areas are permitted 3 units as of right, and that would include this property. So that's already permitted as of right by provincial legislation. Once the property is split, that permission, you could say, would be applicable to both sides of the lot. Even though we are rezoning the property from R1 to R2, the ability to have that much density on this particular parcel does not change in light of the rezoning. So the way the provincial legislation would be interpreted would be that you'd pretty much be able to create that number of units on this property with or without this rezoning. So as far as the merits of the rezoning are concerned, in the eyes of the township bylaw, we need to rezone it to permit the semi.
Okay, well, that's what I understood, and I just wanted it confirmed. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Seeing none. Thank you for this presentation. We'll go to the next public meeting in regards to zoning. Item number 5, proposed zoning bylaw amendment in regards to DUT, file number Z-05-2026. Again, Madam Yariwala, sorry.
No problem.
Presentation in regards to this change.
Yep, I'll share my screen again. So I will go through this presentation a bit quicker, just because a lot of the content is the same, the type of application is the same, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. So this public meeting presentation is for zoning file Z05-2026. All of the same statements that I said at the beginning of the last presentation apply. So basically saying that if a person or public body does not make any oral or written submissions then they cannot be considered to be able to appeal, and they cannot be considered as a party to the hearing of an appeal. So this property is located at 33 Smith Street. This is a map demonstrating its location in Manglake Hill. So the purpose of this application is to rezone the subject property from R1 to R2 to permit 2 semi-detached dwellings. Semi-detached dwellings being the same as what was mentioned in the last application. So here you can see the sketch that was provided by the applicant, as well as a sort of a rough elevation drawing, you could say, or rendering of what they're intending to build, what they're proposing. So here they're proposing single garages, but otherwise a classic semi-detached dwelling. So, excuse me, from the planning analysis, the PPS states that settlement areas shall be the focus of growth and development, and it also states that planning authorities shall support general intensification to support complete communities, including a range and mix of housing options. From the UCPR official plan, this property is designated within the urban policy area. The urban policy area, such as Banglake Hill, shall be the focus of future growth on municipal water and sewer systems. The permitted uses include residential development, and therefore the semi-detached dwellings are permitted in this designation. So moving on to the township zoning bylaw. So this property is zoned R1. The R1 zone permits low density residential uses, but does not permit semi-detached dwellings. As I mentioned in the last one, semi-detached dwellings are permitted in the R2 zone, and therefore the request is to rezone from R1 to R2. Again, the same pieces that I mentioned about provincial legislation in the last presentation apply here as well. The applicants are seeking this rezoning because they do intend to separate the lot to create separate ownership for both sides of the semi. So here is another map of the subject property. The rezoning would be applicable to the entirety of the property. So this application was received on July 20th, 2026. The application was then circulated to internal and external agencies on July 29th. Mail notices were sent to neighbors within 120 meters of the subject property. A sign was posted at the property, and the notice was also published in the local newspaper, all of these in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. Since circulation, no public comments have been received thus far on this application. In terms of next steps, the decision will be considered at the next council meeting on September 24th, 2026. Following the decision, there will be a 20-day appeal period following the notice of decision. If you wish to be notified of this decision of council, you must make a written request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yariwala. At this point, I would ask council if they have any questions in regards to presentation. Mr. Duval?
I just want to let council know that's the house where they're building. It's behind Weldon's scrapyard in Vanicule. So I'm sure we're going to get lots of calls after that.
Thank you for the comment, Mr. Duval. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll go to the public. Any questions or comments in regards to this presentation? Seeing none, so this will conclude the period of the public meeting. So we'll go to item number 6, which is the adjournment. Be it resolved that the public meeting of August 28th, 2026 be adjourned. Madam. Second by Mr. Minor. All in favor? Those against? Carried. Thank you so much. Now we'll go to the council meeting, but we're going to wait until Madame Barton gives me the okay to move on.